The day Arden Calloway turned 34, her cousins sat around the Thanksgiving table and passed the sweet potato pie like they were also passing her name around, carefully, quietly, with pity hiding under their smiles. Still at the same church? Her Aunt Suzanne asked, not looking up from her plate. Yes, ma'am. Still doing that? Prayer group thing? Yes, ma'am. A fork clinked. Someone coughed. And then Brielle, her own sister, Brielle, said the thing that split the evening in half. Arden, honey. She said it so gently, like she was handing her something fragile. Don't you think it's time to be a little more realistic? The table went quiet. Arden held her glass of sweet tea and looked at her sister's face. That careful, sorry face. And she felt something crack open inside her chest. Not with anger.
Not with tears.
With something colder. Realistic. As if trusting God was the most unreasonable thing a grown woman could do. She smiled, excused herself to the bathroom. Lock the door. Looked in the mirror at her own brown eyes and said out loud, in a voice barely above a whisper, Lord, if you are still in this, I need you to show me. Because I am tired. Nothing happened. The toilet hummed. Someone knocked. Arden straightened her dress and walked back out. But something, she would not know how to explain it until later, had shifted. Like a door inside her had been opened just one crack. Just enough to let in a sliver of something she couldn't name. Arden lived in a beige apartment on Maple Cross Road in Augusta, Georgia. She worked as a records coordinator at a county hospital. She sang alto in the praise and worship team at Cornerstone Fellowship. She prayed every morning at 5:30, even when she fell asleep in the middle of it. She was, by every visible measure, a woman in a holding pattern. She had prayed for a husband since she was 26. She had prayed with faith. She had prayed through doubt. She had prayed through 3 failed relationships, the last one with a man named Mercer, a soft-spoken accountant from Savannah who loved the Lord and loved her, but, in the end, said he needed someone who wasn't so focused on a plan. She didn't understand that for a long time. She also prayed for something she rarely said out loud, a purpose, something beyond the quiet, good, ordinary life she was living. She felt it in her bones, some calling, some assignment, that had not yet arrived. Like a letter sent from a great distance, still somewhere in transit. Her closest friend, Wren, understood this the way only a woman who has felt the same hollow echo can. You're not crazy, Wren told her one Saturday morning, over coffee and half-eaten bagels. You feel what you feel because God put it there. But what if I'm wrong? Arden said. What if I imagined the whole thing? Wren looked at her with those calm, steady eyes. Has he ever let you imagine something he wasn't going to do? Arden didn't answer, because honestly, she wasn't sure. It was an ordinary Tuesday in March when Ellison Graves walked into the county records office to sort out a documentation issue for a property his nonprofit had acquired. Arden processed 40 requests a day. She did not look up from her screen when the door opened. Good morning, she said, keyboard still going. Name on the file? Ellison Graves. Graves. Something in the deliberate spelling made her look up. He was tall, glasses, a dark green jacket, a face that looked like it belonged to a man who had read many serious books and also laughed easily. He had a folder of documents tucked under his arm and the patient look of someone who was used to waiting. She pulled up the file. There's a lien notation here that shouldn't be, she said. That's going to take a few days to process. I figured, he said. These things usually do. She glanced at the file. Graves Community Learning Center. Free tutoring for children in underserved zip codes. She looked up again. He was already looking at her with a kind of quiet attention that made her feel, oddly, like she was the one being read. You run this? She asked. Trying to, he said. Still working out the kinks. She printed his reference number, slid it across the counter. Their fingers did not touch. Nothing dramatic happened. He said thank you, turned, and walked out the glass door into the gray March morning. Arden stared at the door for 3 seconds after he left. Then her phone buzzed. A work email. She answered it. The day moved on. But she thought about that. Nonprofit name for the rest of the afternoon without knowing why. 3 nights later, she dreamed something strange. She was standing in a large building, not a church exactly, but something like one. There were children everywhere, dozens of them, laughing, running, reading books on the floor. The light was warm and gold. And in the dream, She heard her own voice, not speaking, but singing. A song she didn't recognize, but knew in her body, the way you sometimes know things before you learn them. She woke at 3:47 a.m. with tears on her face and her heart pounding. She lay still. Then she reached for her journal, the worn, coffee-stained one she had filled and refilled for 6 years, and she wrote, "I saw children. I saw purpose. I do not know what this means, but God, if this is you, and I believe it is, then I am saying yes to whatever comes next. I am tired of being afraid of the thing you have already prepared." She closed the journal. Outside, it rained. She felt the strangest peace. 9 months had passed. The lien was cleared in April. Ellison had come back to the office twice more. Once for a follow-up document. Once apparently just to drop off a thank you card with a gift card to a coffee shop inside. "For your patience with the paperwork," it read. E. Graves. Arden had put the card in her drawer. She wasn't sure what to make of it. She was, if she was honest, afraid to make anything of it. Christmas that year was at her mother's house. The tree was loud with ornaments. Her nieces ran circles around the couch. Brielle sat across from her with that careful look again. "I saw your church posted about a volunteer literacy program," Brielle said. "Did you know there's a learning center using your church's address as a partner location?" Arden looked up sharply. "What?" Brielle turned her phone around. Graves Community Learning Center in partnership with Cornerstone Fellowship. Arden stared at the screen. She had not known this. No one had told her. Somehow this man's nonprofit had connected with her church. Her church, without her in the middle of it. She excused herself again. Different bathroom. Same mirror! But this time, what came out of her wasn't a whisper. It was a laugh. Not the polite kind. A real one. The kind that comes from somewhere deep when God does something so specific. So quiet, so precise that you realize he was working the whole time you thought he was silent. She laughed until her eyes watered. He had been building the whole time. January, New Year. The literacy program had launched at Cornerstone on Saturday mornings. Arden had volunteered the first week, telling herself it was just to support the church. Ellison was there, organizing folders, explaining the reading curriculum to a group of parents. He moved around the room with focus and calm. He was the kind of man who made work look like a calling. He saw her across the folding tables and smiled. Not the polite kind. A real one. "You came," he said. "I live here," she said, meaning the church. Then she realized how that sounded and felt her ears go warm. He laughed. "I know. I may have asked Pastor Staton if anyone on the worship team might be good with kids." She stood very still. "He mentioned you," Ellison said. "Specifically." Later that morning, an older woman named Afia, 72 years old, cotton white hair, a cardigan with a crosspin on the lapel, came and sat beside Arden as she read with a 7-year-old named Taylor. When the boy had gone to get a snack, Afia looked at Arden with clear, unbothered eyes and said, "How long you been waiting?" Arden blinked. "Excuse me?" "On whatever it is the Lord promised you." Afia folded her hands. "I can always tell. Woman who's been waiting has a certain kind of patience. Like she learned it the hard way." Arden was quiet. "Then, since I was 26? Afia nodded slowly. 8 years. The old woman looked across the room at the children, at Ellison helping a small boy sound out a word, at the gold morning light falling through the high windows. "You know what they don't tell you about the waiting season?" Afia said. "What?" "It's not empty." She turned to look at Arden directly. "You think it's empty because you can't see what's in it. But God is building in there. He's building the you that can hold what he's about to give. If he'd given it to you at 26, it would have broken you." She paused. "Not because you were weak. Because you weren't finished yet." Arden felt something move through her. Not lightning, not fire. Something slower, like a deep river finding its bed. People mock the waiting because they can't see what God sees. Afia continued. They only see the gap between the promise and the fulfillment. But that gap is not empty space. That gap is God's workroom. Arden stared at the table. 8 years. 8 years of prayer journals. 8 years of Thanksgiving tables and careful questions and the word. Realistic used as a weapon. 8 years of waking at 5:30 to talk to someone she could not see. 8 years of crying. In church parking lots and still, walking back through, The doors the following Sunday. She had not been standing still. She had been being made. Spring, the literacy program was 6 weeks in. Arden and Ellison had begun talking. The way people do when they share a mission and find out they also share a language. Carefully at first, then more freely. Conversations in the church kitchen about the reading curriculum. Conversations in the parking lot that went longer than intended. Conversations that revealed, slowly, that they had both been praying about. The same thing from different directions, for a very long time. One afternoon, standing in the church courtyard as the children boarded a parent's van, Ellison said something she hadn't expected. "I prayed for someone," he said. He wasn't looking at her. He was watching the van pull out. "For years I prayed for someone who wouldn't be afraid of the calling. Someone who had been through enough to understand that purpose isn't comfortable. And when Pastor Staton mentioned you, even just your name, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time." Arden stood very still. "I'm not rushing anything," he said. "I just thought you should know that I don't think it's an accident that you're here." She looked at this man, this quiet, serious, laughing man, and thought of Afia's words. God is building in there. He's building the you that can hold what he's about to give. "I don't think it's an accident either," she said. Summer. Arden sat on her small apartment balcony with her worn journal and a cup of coffee. The morning was soft. A bird was doing something determined and loud in the tree below. She opened to a new page. She thought about the Thanksgiving table, about Brielle's gentle, sorry face, about the word realistic, and the years she had spent defending something she couldn't fully explain, not to others, and sometimes not even to herself. She thought about what she wanted to say to every woman sitting at a table where someone was quietly doubting her. Every woman who had cried in a church parking lot and walked back in anyway. Every woman who had prayed until her knees ached for something that had not yet come, who had been told her faith was impractical. Her hope was naive, her waiting was embarrassing. She wrote, what every woman should know when others mock her waiting season. They are not wrong that the wait is long. They are wrong about what the wait means. They think silence is absence, but God's silence is not the silence of a man who forgot you. It is the silence of a craftsman at work, deep in something, focused, precise. You cannot hear the making, but you will see what was made. They think you are standing still, but waiting on God is not stillness. It is one of the most active things a soul can do. It requires more strength to hold faith in the dark than to find it in the light. They will call you unrealistic. Let them. The real things, the things that last, the things God authors have always looked unrealistic from the outside. The Red Sea looked closed. The giant looked too large. The tomb looked final. Your waiting season is not your punishment. It is not a sign that you prayed the wrong way or believed the wrong amount. It is not evidence that God has moved on or that you missed your moment. It is evidence that God is building something in you that is worth the time it takes to build it. And when it comes, and it will come, you will understand in a single moment why it was this long and not shorter. You will see the architecture of His faithfulness and recognize that every unanswered November, every birthday that came and went, every question you swallowed at the holiday table, all of it was material. All of it was part of what He was making. Hold on, not because you see it yet, but because He does. She closed the journal. Below, the bird was still going. The coffee had cooled. The morning was still soft and gold. Arden Calloway, 34 years old, records coordinator, alto singer, 8 years a waiter, and finally, beginning to understand the shape of what God had been building all along, sat in the quiet and simply let herself be grateful. Not for what was behind her, not even for what was coming, but for the God who had been present in every single year of the wait, working, shaping, building, even when she couldn't hear a sound. It wasn't the end of her story, but it was the end of her doubt. And sometimes that is exactly where the real story begins.